Welcome, and thank you for tuning in for another episode of the Sitecore Water Cooler, the casual conversation podcast dedicated to covering all things related to Sitecore, including product updates, full site builds, suggestions and insights, getting the most out of your Sitecore investment, and more. I'm your host, John Price, Sitecore Practice Director and MVP at AmericanEagle.com. Organizations today are in the continuous pursuit of their ever-elusive 360-degree view of their customers and prospects. The reason why organizations struggle with this is the fact that they have numerous systems that hold different types of data, and it is always a challenge to marry these different data sources. However, once organizations can marry customer data from numerous data sources, new doors are open for things like explicit personalization and marketing automation. To talk more specifically, a good majority of Sitecore customers are also Salesforce CRM and Salesforce Marketing Cloud users. The opportunity to have these systems connected has never been more advantageous. And the way to marry Sitecore and Salesforce has never been more streamlined. Sitecore offers a Salesforce connector to accelerate these data connections. Today, we're going to dive into how a specific Sitecore customer, Renown Health, was able to utilize the Salesforce and Sitecore connector to better reach their constituents. To discuss the Sitecore Salesforce connector and the Renown Health story today are Maggie Burke, a seasoned Sitecore project manager from AmericanEagle.com, and Alex Lentz, an experienced Sitecore architect from AmericanEagle.com. Both of whom worked on the Renown Health Sitecore Salesforce project. Maggie, Alex, welcome to the show.
Thank you, John. Happy to be here.
Thanks for having us, John.
So, Maggie, you were the project manager and the main driver of this Renown Health project. Let's start by giving a little background on who Renown Health is and what some of their goals were for this specific project.
Thanks, John. So Renown Health is Northern Nevada's leading and largest healthcare organization and Reno's only locally owned not-for-profit healthcare system. They are an entire network of Nevada hospitals, urgent care centers, lab services, x-ray and imaging services, primary care doctors, and dozens of medical specialties. Renown came to AmericanEagle.com in December of 2019 with a vision to have a more consolidated single content management system to house their various web properties under one name, Renown.org. With knowledge of previous healthcare implementations that AmericanEagle.com had completed on Sitecore, the teams came together to make that vision a reality. The project itself kicked off in March of 2020 and went through various stages of discovery, definition, design, and development to reach the brand new launch of their modern integrated website for their patient community. This happened all while COVID-19 turned healthcare and the entire world upside down. So in times where people are apprehensive about even going into a grocery store, let alone a hospital, it became even more apparent to Renown how important their digital presence was to their community. So this site that was built entirely on Sitecore's Experience Accelerator 9.3 included various integrations with different systems, one of which was Sitecore Connect for Salesforce Marketing Cloud. Renown really wanted to make sure that they were capturing their community, but also outreaching to the right people and making sure that they got their information as best as they could. And leveraging that Sitecore Connect for Salesforce Marketing Cloud allowed them to do that.
Sounds like a very fun and exciting project. So it sounds like a lot of their goals were where a lot of health systems struggle, where they need to provide communication, not only to their constituents, their customers, but also maybe internally as well. So it sounds like the project is really centered around this communication.
Correct. So basically, when anybody is coming to their website, they want to know who those people are and make sure that they're finding the information correctly and quickly so that they're not spending time, wasting time, trying to ultimately get to the end goal that they want to get to.
Sure. Really trying to providing the user really the next best step instead of just having them blindly navigate around.
Correct.
Very cool. So Alex, let's jump to you. So you're the architect on this specific project. So a lot of this project was centered around the Sitecore and Salesforce connector. So maybe speaking from a high level, what does this connector really set out to do?
Yeah, that's a great question, John. So within the SFMC connector between Salesforce and Sitecore, you've really got two different parts. You've got the behavioral data exchange package from Sitecore, and then you've also got the content exchange package from Sitecore. The first part, the behavioral data exchange package, is really responsible for getting those contacts, those facets, and all those lists, all that information from Sitecore up to SFMC. So that way Renown can use the information for everybody coming into their site, and they can use that within SFMC to create lists, create emails, utilize all that information. The second part, the content exchange, that's more responsible for the media library side of things. So you've got all of Renown's assets, all of their images, and that syncs all of that information between Sitecore and up to SFMC so they can use all of that in their email journeys.
Very cool. So really the first part, if we break that down, that's really taking tracking data from within Sitecore, syncing it to Salesforce, really on a contact by contact basis. Then someone in SFMC could create maybe a journey builder around this persona or this action on a website.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Very cool. And then the second half is really kind of more for like content governance and syndication, where I can manage a certain repository of imagery or piece of content, and I can sync those to SFMC to basically reuse for like email campaigns.
Exactly.
So the connector really kind of handles both those use cases.
Yep.
Very cool. I know there's been some recent updates to the Sitecore Salesforce connector with the release of 10 and 10.2. But it's my understanding, you guys use the out-of-the-box Sitecore Salesforce connector, which can accomplish some of these things. But what were some of the extensions or customizations you guys were able to use with the connector?
So within the connector that we implemented for Renown, I would say one of the biggest extensions that we did was just to make sure that the custom facets that they have on Renown.org are pushed up to SFMC, along with all the out-of-the-box facets as well.
Yeah. And for the listeners, facets are really, if you take a profile, it's really the data that kind of is attributed to that profile. So maybe a goal, a persona, and then a facet could be something custom like an email or some other type of attribute on the website. Is that fair to say?
Yep, exactly.
Very cool. And again, a user of SFMC could take that and then build an email campaign or personalization journey off of that.
Right. So if you've got, let's say you have a goal set up on Renown.org where if someone visits a certain number of pages, they get classified as a certain type of user, right? So if they look at a lot of behavioral health things, they'll be falling into that bucket. You can push that information up to SFMC and create an email or journey builder around that.
That's great.
I would say the other thing, John, in that regard with the SFMC connector is that it does rely heavily on data exchange framework. So you're going to want to make sure that you have a pretty deep understanding of that before you go ahead and implement it.
Very cool. And Maggie, I'm sure a lot of planning went into this project. Can you maybe give a quick description of what the initial phase of this project looked like to kind of even plan for this type of implementation?
Sure, John. So essentially what we did was we started off really diving into the discovery of this project. So we really tried to break down the different personas that are going to be going to the website, whether that's a patient, a healthcare professional, or even a media contributor, so that they know exactly where they have to go on the site, but also breaking down the journeys of those separate personas. So what are their entry requirements as well as their exit requirements? What are we going to do to make sure that the acquisition is there as well as the engagement, and then pushing that all the way over to that conversion point, but also trying to make sure that the retention point is still there. And that's where that Sitecore Connect for Salesforce Marketing Cloud comes into play, because you're not just getting people onto your website, but then making sure that that outreach is there so that you can retain them and make sure that they come back to the site, come back to the healthcare system, and ultimately stay with your organization.
Great. So if I was going to break down the project from a high level from with what I'm hearing is initial planning, discovery for how you're going to reach these customers, the touch points from beginning of a website visit to basically an exit, and basically how you guys can personalize them, to, during, and after.
Correct. So, it's not just about making sure that you're getting that data there, but then also making sure that you, to your point, are personalizing it so that when those people are coming to the site, maybe you show a different hero or you label a CTA differently based off of the type of persona that's coming to the site.
With this implementation, with health systems, a lot of health systems share a lot of the same types of functionality, but for Renown.org, what were some key functionalities that were vital to this project?
So in terms of functionality for this site, we really tried to enhance their search, and with integrating with the Hawk Search enterprise search tool platform, we were able to really bring forward a lot of their facets, as we talked about before, or filtering, so that essentially when you're looking for a doctor or you're looking for a location, you can really pinpoint exactly what you're trying to look for. And within that space, we found that since the site's gone live, there's actually been a 61% decrease in pages viewed per session for doctor interest views. Essentially, you'd actually see that number and think maybe, there's a problem with the numbers going down. But in reality, we found that people are now only having to go through about a page or two to find the doctor that they need, rather than previously having to go through about 6 or 7 pages to actually find the doctor that they need. And, when somebody's going to a healthcare website, that might be the first thing they're trying to look for, is just what is the doctor that I'm trying to see? What kind of specialty am I trying to get to? So we found that by enhancing their search, we were really able to help them in that regard. I think also, too, another large integration that we did in terms of the functionality is with HealthWise clinical content. So we did a plugin with HealthWise. It's a company that really leverages healthcare clinical content to outreach to different communities. And by doing so, the Renown Health team was able to simply just input a code into rendering on the site that would dynamically pull in clinical content from a healthcare source to display to their different users. So it really took the burden off of content authors while also making sure that they filled their site with proper content. So that was another probably key feature to the site as well.
So bringing this back full circle, when we're talking about search and maybe this other dynamic external content, bringing this full circle is if a user is identified on the Sitecore site and maybe if their data is synced to Salesforce, Renown has the ability to email these individuals saying, hey, we already know you're interested in behavioral health, or we know you're interested in nursing care, and you can drive users to specific pages or facets to get them to these results quicker, which probably also factored into some of these metrics.
Correct.
What are some other metrics that you guys have seen so far with this solution being live for about 6 months?
Yeah, so if we want to kind of break the metrics down into acquisition, engagement, and conversion, because again, that's really the point that we tried to make during the discovery phase. In terms of acquisition, the site has been live for about roughly 6 months at this point, and the site has seen a 386% increase in session count, as well as a 142% increase in organic traffic. So just acquiring and getting eyes on the site has really jumped for Renown Health. As well as then just engagement, they've seen a 90% increase in pages and sessions, as well as an 83% increase in session time. So they're seeing that people are actually staying on the site, engaging with the content more. And then just from a conversion standpoint, and really trying to focus most on the providers that they have in their system, they've seen a 103% increase in people just looking for doctors. And then again, to bring back that decrease, the 61% decrease in pages viewed per session for doctor interest views, so that people, again, are getting the information that they need quicker, which ultimately helps Renown Health convert.
I think this brings up a very important point for the audience is when you're going through a planning of a project like this, coming up with some key targets and KPIs are extremely important because they'll actually probably help you in the planning of this type of implementation or a type of integration like with Sitecore and Salesforce. So Maggie, what are some other use cases that you can think of that someone could utilize with the Sitecore and Salesforce connector?
It's a great question. So I think that there are plenty of different use cases that can be used between Sitecore Connect for Salesforce Marketing Cloud and using the Sitecore platform in general. One is connecting directly with users who subscribe to newsletters or sign up for events on your website. So if somebody is going directly to a blog or an event page and they're signing up for, a newsletter that might be coming up or an event that's coming up, they get a curated list automatically from somebody signing up, and you can also see, again, where those users might have been on your site previously. From there, you can actually use targeted email campaigns for those users using the data that's been collected so that you can customize the journey for your specific users. Another one is that you can generate catered email campaigns in Salesforce based on the user data passed from Sitecore. So again, you're getting those curated lists. You see exactly where the people in those lists have come from. So then that way you can make sure that the emails that are going out to those people are generated specifically for them. So that, again, they're not thinking that this is just a blanket email that's going out. It might be catered a little bit more to them and makes it feel a little bit more personal. As well as you can target audiences based on user data to increase engagement and overall business value.
Maggie, Alex, thank you for your time today and discussing the Renown Health journey and the Sitecore Salesforce connector specifically. It was a pleasure having you swing by the Sitecore water cooler, and we hope to have you on again soon.
Thanks, John.
Thank you, John.
Thanks again to Maggie Burke and Alex Lenz for joining us today on the Sitecore Water Cooler podcast, a casual conversation between colleagues and peers centered around all things Sitecore. I'm your host, John Price, and until next time we meet at the water cooler, be sure to subscribe to the Sitecore Water Cooler podcast today, wherever you find your podcasts. This episode is brought to you by AmericanEagle.com Studios, with special thanks to executive producers Renee Nelson, Julia Klepich, and Demita Menezes.